Hey everyone, I'm Seth, and this is another episode of BrundleFly's Rankings and Reviews. And tonight I'm going to be covering the sequel, Stakeland 2. So, this is a movie that I have a couple conflicted thoughts on. For starters, I think it's a really good sequel, but it's also inferior to the first film, and I will get into some of my dislikes a little bit later. There's a lot to like about this movie. Now, this is set 10 years after the events of the first film, and where we last left these characters of Mr. played by Nick D'Amici and Martin played by Connor Pello. Um, so they came across a young woman named Peggy. She is played by Bonnie Dennison, and Peggy and Martin they have a little bit of a connection, and after Mr. watches as the two take out a vampire, and he kind of sees where Martin has become fully capable of defending himself and fighting for his life in this vampire apocalypse. He He leaves behind a necklace that he had. But that's the cool thing about the first movie. Is the first movie there was sort of an evolution of Martin's character, going from someone who barely had the courage to put a hammer onto the stake, and by the end he fully walked up to a vampire and killed it. So, and that's kind of what Mister was trying to do. He was trying to teach Martin how to survive. So now it's 10 years later. Martin and Peggy they have a life in New Eden, which is located in Canada, and they have a daughter. And the movie opens with New Eden being attacked by a vampire, strictly called Mother, played by Christina Hughes. And it's the vampires and the Brotherhood that attack. And as a result, Peggy and their daughter, uh, who they named Belle after Danielle Harris's character in the first film, they are killed by this one-eyed vampire named Mother in the Brotherhood. And so the basic story is Martin wants revenge, and so he leaves Canada and travels south, heading back into the U.S., looking for Mister to help him get his revenge. Um, and along the way, he meets this old couple that try to poison him and kill him. Although I, I I wish that part was a little bit more clear. I didn't quite catch on to the motives of this old couple. But from there, he comes across these people who kidnap him, and it becomes sort of like almost like a Mad Max type of situation. And he's put into this pit where he has to fight for his life, and this is where Mister is reintroduced as he's captured and he's put into this arena type thing for entertainment. And eventually, Mister recognizes Martin, because Martin is wearing the necklace that he gave him, or that he left behind. And the two manage to escape, and they take along this young woman named, they just name her Lady. She is played by Laura Abramson, and she's sort of like this feral, young woman who was kind of like raised on her own in the wilds of Stakeland. And soon after that, Mister is captured by the Brotherhood. Um, Martin just barely gets there in time to save him, but Mister is severely wounded. They continue to travel, um, trying to get to a compound not too far from them that Mister knows about, so he can get fixed. Um, and along the way, they encounter a couple more members of the Brotherhood. They kill two of them. One they let live. He's just a teenage boy, and Mister for some reason decides to just let him live. And they also come across a couple people that Mister knows. One is a character named Bat, played by A.C. Peterson, and they take him back to their compound, the place that they were trying to go. And so there we meet Dr. Earl, played by Stephen Williams, famously known as Creighton Duke from Jason Goes to Hell. He was also Rufus on Supernatural. And he patches up Mister while the young boy from the Brotherhood that they captured, Judah, played by Zane Clifford, is kind of put into a holding cell. And from there, we also meet a character named Billy, who's kind of like she just takes on a couple different roles in the facility. She kind of sympathizes towards Judah a little bit, a little too much. And as a result, Judah gets out, and being the true peckerhead that he is, he goes back to the Brotherhood and the vampires, led by Mother, and leads them to the compound, and they attack. So I enjoy this movie as a sequel. I particularly like how, okay, so we finally get some background on Mister, and as we do, we realize that the whole story, Martin's whole story arc, is completely parallel to what Mister went through back when the vampire uprising first happened. And so I thought that's a pretty cool thing to do here, because this is totally Martin's story. Mister doesn't come into it until quite later. His introduction is in the arena scene, and even after then, he's wounded and he's just out of commission for most of the movie as he's healing until the end scene. So, it, as Martin's story, this works completely as a sequel, but that's kind of like one of the negatives about this movie, is because one of the things I really liked about the first one is the character of Mister, and he was kind of he was just out of commission. And Martin is a cool character, but I'm more interested in seeing Mister, and especially how badass he was in the first movie. Yeah, so it's good in that aspect, but I don't. It doesn't have the same feeling. It's got a couple different directors. The first one was directed by Jim Mickle. This one was directed by a couple other guys, and the visual aspect of it doesn't quite match the visual aspect of the first one. There was a feeling about the first one. It felt a little bit more raw. This one felt a little bit more flat. And again, like I mentioned earlier too, I don't quite understand the old couple that tried to poison Martin. I wish that was a little bit more clear. But other than that, it was good. I mean, Mother was a interesting villain. The Brotherhood, they're intriguing too, as sort of like this extra layer of intensity in this world that they've established. They don't have to worry just about the vampires at night, but they got to worry about the Brotherhood during the day. And I'm kind of curious to see just quite how this union between the two happened, where the Brotherhood are exempt from being attacked, because most of the vampires in these movies are pretty savage. But it's a good fucking movie. I just had a couple flaws with it, and it just doesn't kind of match how I feel about the first one. But there needs to be a Stakeland 3. This is a series that I think needs at least one more story, and it needs to end in a very satisfying way. Because every time I watch Stakeland 2, when it kind of ends the way it does, it just seems like, okay, they have an idea of where to go from here, and I'm on board for that. Like, I really want to see what they have in mind. And I even have my own kind of ideas of how I think things should go. I would really like to see, instead of running from the vampires and the Brotherhood, I kind of want to see the fight being taken to them. I kind of want to see sort of like a almost like an I Am Legend type thing. If you read the Richard Matheson novel, where these characters are they're going after the Brotherhood, they're taking out the brother. To preface that, they meet maybe other people, and so an army forms. I kind of forgot to mention that aspect, but like I just kind of want to see the fight being taken to them. They're taking out the Brotherhood, they're killing vampires during the day, and whether or not one of the two main characters of Mr. Martin either live or die, I'm not sure how that should go. It's kind of hard to gauge where I think, or what I think would be satisfying as far as an ending to this series, which I think should just be a trilogy. I think there's enough strong material to make it a trilogy. And I just kind of want to see where Mr. Martin turned the tables on the Brotherhood and the vampires. And, could we see an end to the vampire apocalypse, or at least to these characters? That would depend. Again, those are just my thoughts, and who the fuck am I? I'm sure none of the people that are involved in those movies would even consider my opinion. But I'm really curious to see where they would go with it. And I really want it to happen. I am a fan. I did these videos to, hopefully get a couple people to take interest in these movies and watch them and get their numbers up, just kind of support these people and these movies, and spread the good word. But anyway, that's my review of Stakeland 2. It's good, but it's not great. As a sequel, I think it works. Just not on the level of the first one. So I know I'm just rambling here, so I'm just going to call it a night. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe, hit the thumbs up button, leave a comment. How do you feel about Stakeland 2, also known as the Stakelander, a title I don't really care for. But I know that there's kind of agreed upon where the second one isn't as good as the first one, but then I'm seeing comments where people say they like the second one, some comments from people who say they didn't like the second one. How do you feel about it? If you didn't like this video, hit the thumbs down button. and leave a negative Nancy comment in the comment section below. And in the meantime, have a good night. I'm Seth. This has been BrundleFly's Rankings and Reviews. Good night, fuckers.